Xin Chào, and welcome back to our travel update channel. In addition to the weekly Vietnam travel updates, we will regularly bring you introductions about the tourist attractions and destinations that you should not miss when visiting Vietnam. In today's video, we would like to introduce you to a beautiful attraction that you should not miss when visiting Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. It is Hoan Kiem Lake. Hoan Kiem Lake is a famous lake located in the center of Hanoi. Some people say that the lake is considered as a bouquet, which plays an important role in making the landscape of the city more beautiful and airy. This spiritual heart of the capital city is also known as Sword Lake, Lake of the Restored Sword. The name Hoan Kiem is said to be given to the lake by King Lê Thái Tall in the 15th century. It is related to the legend Restored Sword that most Vietnamese people know by heart. And now I would like to share with you this legendary story. The Restored Sword legend has it that it was the early 1400s when the Chinese Ming invaders had taken over this part of Vietnam. Chinese domination weighed heavily on the country. Overburdened with taxes, the population hated the occupying forces. In Thanh Hoa Province, Lam Son District, about 200 kilometers away from the capital, freedom-thirsty patriots rose up, led by a local leader named Lê Lợi. But the forces were far unequal and they suffered defeat. It was then that Long Quan, the Emperor of Water, decided to intervene. At the time there lived in Thanh Hoa a fisherman called Lê Tin. He usually went fishing at night. In one evening, as he lifted his net, he found that it was much heavier than usual.
A big fish,
He thought. He was very pleased, but it was only an iron bar which he threw back into the water. A little farther, as he cast this net again, he then lifted and found the same iron bar. And thus, 3 times in succession. Surprised, he had a closer look at the strange thing.
oh dear. It's a sword blade.
He exclaimed. Sometime later he joined the Lam Son volunteers. One day, the commander-in-chief Lê Lợi and some privates called on the fisherman's cottage. The cottage was dark even in broad daylight, but in a corner shone the sword blade. Astonished, Lê Lợi took up the sword blade and studied it. These words were engraved on the metal, Heaven's will. However, none of the men paid great attention to it. Sometime later, Lê Lợi and his lieutenants had to retreat and spend the night in a forest. That night, he saw a strange light on a banyan tree. Climbing the tree, he discovered that the light was coming from a sword hilt inlaid with jade. It was then that he remembered the sword blade he had seen at the fisherman's cottage. Some days later, meeting the young fisherman again, he told Tin about his recent discovery. Like a miracle, the hilt perfectly fitted the blade.
It's heaven's will, sir. You're the chosen one.
The fisherman exclaimed.
We pledge to follow you and sacrifice our lives for the independence of the homeland.
Since then, the sacred sword in Lê Lợi hands increased the morale of the insurgents, and it is not surprising that the insurgents won many glorious victories from battle to battle. Soon the whole country was liberated. Lê Lợi became the king of Vietnam under the name Lê Thái Tall. 1 year later, when he was boating on Luc Thuy Lake, a former name of Hoan Kiem Lake, a golden tortoise god surfaced, swimming toward the royal boat and asking him to return the magical sword to the King of Waters.
Please,
It said.
be so kind as to return to my master, the Emperor of the Kingdom of Waters, the sacred sword that he has entrusted you.
Lê Lợi gave the sword to the tortoise. The tortoise, as quickly as possible, received the sword and dived into the lake. To commemorate this event, the king renamed Luc Thuy or Greenwater Lake to Hoan Kiem Lake or Restored Sword Lake. It was since that day, the lake has been called by new name, Hoan Kiem Lake or Restored Sword Lake, or the shorter one is Gum Lake, which means Sword Lake. And that is the legend of the lake. The sword was never seen again. But enormous tortoises have really lived in Hoan Kiem Lake. Some have even been studied. In 1967, a 550-pound, nearly 7-foot-long male climbed to shore and died. It was preserved and placed in a glass box in Ngoc Sun Temple, which is located on a small island in the northern part of the lake, along with a plaque noting that it is more than 500 years old, suggesting that it could be the golden tortoise. Another giant was captured on camera for the first time in 1998. Unfortunately, the fortuitous sightings at Hoan Kiem Lake ended on January 19, 2016, when the last tortoise resident died. This one, known as Kujua, or great-grandfather tortoise, was the most famous of its kind. Its death was a deeply tragic environmental and cultural loss. After it died, its body was sent to Hanoi's Museum of Nature, where German specialists were brought in to preserve it using plastination. The plastinated Kujua now also shares a room in Nok Sun Temple with the embalmed relative who died in 1967. It can now be safely displayed at room temperature, but to shield it from dust, mildew, and sunlight, the authorities have placed it in a glass case. A symbol of the country's independence and longevity, even seen as a deity that has protected its capital, the tortoise is immortalized in art and architecture around Hanoi. Today, the lake's water surface is around 120,000 square meters. The maximum of its length is 700 meters, and the maximum width is 250 meters. In its original form, Hoan Kiem Lake was much larger than the lake of today. In the past, especially during the time of the French colony, many parts of this lake were filled to expand Hanoi City. Like many other historical monuments in Vietnam, Hoan Kiem Lake suffered a lot of damage in the Vietnam War. Located in between the Old Quarter and a part of the French Quarter, the lake becomes one of the major scenic spots in the city and serves as a focal point for its public life. Visiting Sword Lake, visitors should not ignore a significant landmark, located in the center of the lake. It is Thap Rua or Tortoise Tower. Beside the legend of the lake and the tortoise god I told you earlier, the story of this tortoise tower is also very interesting. I won't make you wait long. This architectural work was built in 1886 on a tiny island in the middle of the lake. The tower had the courtesy name Quy Sun Tower, meaning Tortoise Mountain Tower, because it's a natural ayat where tortoises had usually basked in the sun and laid eggs in summer. 600 years ago, under the Lei dynasty, a pavilion was built here for the king to rest while going fishing, and it was replaced by a temple in the following dynasty, but it was left abandoned and in decadence during the Nguyen dynasty in the 19th century. Years later, in 1886, while Vietnam was occupied by the French, Nguyen Ngoc Kim, a nearby village official remained on duty and served as mediator between the local people and the French occupation forces. He was called by the villagers, Notable Kim. Around 1884 to 1886, a feng shui master told Kim that it would be of good fortune for his family to bury his parents' remains in the ayat. Kim then used the excuse to build a tower there to sneakily bury his parent. Residents of the city soon discovered his designs, though, and removed his parents' remains from the structure. During the French colonial period, on the top of the Tortoise Tower, a version of the Statue of Liberty was erected and called an ironic name, Statue of the Open Dress Dame. After 1945, this statue was demolished. Because the tower was built by an ideal not very noble, after the August Revolution in 1945, the people planned to demolish the tower as well. However, it was kept to hang a revolutionary flag. Through the ups and downs of history, the Tortoise Tower has become familiar for every citizen of Hanoi and tourists from all over the world. The tower is a combination of European and Vietnamese architecture, with Gothic arches at its first 2 stories combined with the hip roof of Vietnam architecture. The rectangle-shaped brick tower has 4 facades and 4 stories and was built on a mound measuring 350 square meters. The base floor is the largest. The upper floors are narrower. Today, the tower has a much more peaceful life. It has been decades since there has been a need to remind the Vietnamese people to rise up and fight against invaders. The Tortoise Tower can be viewed from nearly every point at the lake, standing proudly at its center. Since the lake and surrounding parkland is one of Hanoi's popular walking spots, why not take one round? It's about a 20-minute walk. You will love this. In the early morning and late afternoon, people often come here to jog, play badminton, practice tai chi, meditation, dance aerobics, and do many other exercises. At the beginning of 2021, Hanoi expanded its pedestrian street area to the southern edge of the Old Quarter, which includes the streets around Hoan Kiem Lake. The aim, of course, is to boost the area's tourism and general commerce in goods and services. The walking streets officially operate every weekend. The pedestrian streets are off-limits to motor vehicles from 7 p.m. on Friday through midnight on Sunday in the summer. In the winter, the vehicle ban begins 1 hour earlier. This is the first video of many of Vietnam's must-see places and attractions to come. Stay tuned because next, we'll be taking you to more interesting locations. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a like, and if you want to keep watching our Vietnam travel updates, please subscribe and hit that bell so you'll know when the next video is posted. Until next time.